welcome to Career Competitor, where we welcome guests to share insights that will light the fire within you to make a career of competing. Whether that be in your career, your business, your personal life, or simply within you, as the competitor within you might just be the greatest competition in your world. While I have you here, take the time to be rating the show, especially if you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts. Also, be sure to subscribe or follow the show on whatever podcasting platform you're listening to us on. Finally, be sure to head to careercompetitor.com, where you can learn all about what it is I offer within my executive coaching company and what it is I could potentially do to you as an individual or on behalf of you within your team and or organization. I would love the opportunity to connect with you, so be sure to reach out to me, steve@careercompetitor.com. That's steve@careercompetitor.com. But like I said, head to the website and be sure to check out everything that I offer and to learn more about how I can be of impact to you within your world. But for now, let's welcome in our guest for this episode of Career Competitor. Okay, our career competitors today, that's right, plural, are the founders of School 16, which is a learning environment that provides opportunities for all students, regardless of background or experience, to rapidly acquire the knowledge necessary to lead fulfilling and successful careers. These two founders believe that when it comes to high-income technology careers specifically, a well-rounded foundation and understanding of how business teams function is critical to career advancement. Thanks to their vision and leadership, School 16 is building a new model of education to address this new reality. And they are here today to motivate any listeners that might just be looking to discover new opportunities in life. I am delighted to be welcoming into Career Competitor brothers Sergei and Vadim Revzin. Guys, how are we doing today?
We're doing well, thanks so much. And we're actually even twin brothers. I don't know if you caught on to that. Most people can't tell right away. Sometimes they're like twins or
Right.
Just brothers. We're actually identical twins.
Yeah, I love that. I love
Great.
that. And again, we're gonna do our best. I've done a number of group conversations before, and usually they're in person. And I'll be making sure that I mention your name before I ask the question, before we have people talking over each other and all this kind of thing. But at the same time, guys, I'm just, as I was joking with you before we press record here, the fact of the matter is someone reached out on your behalf, and within 20, 30 seconds of seeing what you guys are doing with School 16 and what the mission of the company is all about, I was completely sold and excited by the opportunity to spend some time with you guys today. So let's start with Vadim. Why don't you just fill us in a little bit here with School 16, the origin of it, and really what it is you guys are providing today?
So, we come from a family of educators. So I think getting into education was always going to be something that was kind of going to sit in the back of our minds and something we would pursue. But we actually started off in finance and then found ourselves in tech. We were always excited about startups and innovation, and we felt that would be a fulfilling career path to follow. And so both Sergei and I started off in sales. He continued in the sales route, sales and marketing. I kind of stayed in sales engineering and product management. And when I was about 30 years old, I got the opportunity to become a professor at Purchase College, the State University of New York's university system. And that was pretty cool because I thought, it'd be great to become a professor maybe in my 50s, kind of towards the end of my career. And the opportunity came a lot earlier. And that was the first sort of sense of what it's like to be in higher education. And after that, I got into NYU. Sergei was actually already there. I became a professor there. Sergei was a venture investor and a lecturer there doing tech investments. They invest in students and professors and the like. And through both of those experiences, and I think the fact that we worked in tech for so many years, we started to see an opportunity. And that was that, we would have people that were going to, one of the best universities in the world, certainly provides one of the best educations in the world, going through their MBA, whatever it was. And oftentimes they were doing that to figure out what to do with their life, right? To figure out what their next step should be. Hey, I was doing consulting for 3 years. Let me go to Stern to figure out what I should do next. And they'd be coming to us after one of our classes or one of our lectures saying, hey, I learned more about let's say startup financials or startup fundraising than I did in most of my MBA, right? And I learned more about the direction I should take next from your classes because they were so practical. So there was kind of an aha moment there that we were doing something different in the classroom. I took a class that had like 50% attendance. It was just a foundations of management class in Tandon School of Engineering. Really good class. The structure of the class was really good, but students, it was a required class, and I also skipped some classes in college. It definitely happens. But my vision was, how do we make sure we get people in the classroom? And I flipped the curriculum, made sure that it's super, super practical for the business students, and got the attendance up to about 99%. And so that was sort of another point of proof for us and validation that we should do something in education and we should do something in future career development. And of course, tech always made sense for us.
Sure.
Almost every job now is tech. Even if you don't work for a tech company, you work for a tech-enabled organizations. They're thinking about innovation for the future. People obviously are thinking about how to advance their careers, how to make sure that they stay competitive. And especially when we launched, which was during COVID, we knew that there was going to be a lot of opportunity there. And that's what kind of gave us the idea for School 16 to build a live education program for people that want to advance their careers in tech.
I love it, and so much of the story I'm hearing so far is, of course, you guys are twin brothers, but to say that you guys are cut from the same cloth is almost, it goes without saying in a lot of ways. But there's clearly a shared perspective here that you guys have towards education. As I was preparing for this interview, the word that kept jumping out with everything that I read about you guys was that of resourceful. Like it wasn't just education; you were providing a view, let's say, on education that can be resourceful towards those that are choosing to apply it. And while I look currently at Sergei's screen and his face is actually frozen during the interview, it's all good. I'm going to come back to you, Vadim, on just this notion of what does it mean to, I guess, take a component of education the way you're presenting it and put that resourceful spin on it. Like what is that shift? What is that slight twist on education that allows for whatever it is that you're teaching to suddenly now become resourceful far beyond the class itself?
I think we picked this up from our father, actually. So the name School 16 comes from our dad's school. He was an education innovator in lower education in Belarus, which is where we're from. We're half Ukrainian, half Belarusian. And he had a very successful school system in Belarus for K through 12. He even had delegates from the US fly to Belarus in the 80s, which is like most people don't even know where Belarus is on the map today, let alone in the 80s. And one of his insights was that you need to let students learn what they want to learn. So if somebody's gifted in art, let them double up on art classes. If someone's gifted in math, let them double up on that. And that kind of drove us because obviously in our education and our work experiences, we were able to do that. We were able to explore what we were good at and double down on that as well. And when we were building School 16, we wanted to challenge the assumption that you need to do, what everyone else is saying is the hot topic. So one sort of really core thing that we challenged was everybody needs to learn how to code, right? We've been hearing that for about a decade. There's a lot of coding boot camps out there. And look, we've been in tech for about a decade. I don't know how to code. I taught myself a little SQL. I was a sales engineer and product manager, so I taught myself some of the things I needed to learn to be good at my job, but I certainly didn't need to know how to do that to sort of accelerate my own skill set and bring my own resourcefulness to these different organizations. And so we took that model to our school where we really help people explore what they're good at, explore different roles in tech that are specifically non-technical because we think that there's lower barrier to entries in those roles, and then figure out how to get their foot in the door for an opportunity. And this is actually really critical because a lot of people put pressure on themselves to get the highest paying job right away, right? Or to get the job that everybody else wants. But the way the world actually works is you need to build on your skill sets and build on your credibility, right? So, we weren't born credible, right? You get a good university degree, great. That adds a notch to your belt. Sergey and I were fortunate enough to become contributors on publications like Forbes and Harvard Business Review. Obviously, stuff like that elevates your credibility. But that's the case with everybody else. We started off working in small startups and eventually ended up in growth stage startups and places like NYU, but that didn't take one day. And so I think resourcefulness really comes to figuring out what you're good at and figuring out sort of the minimum viable things that you need to do to get your foot in the door for an opportunity. And this is why, for our school in particular, we don't say you have to go to school for a year or two. Our program is 4 months. And we say, learn just what you need to learn to get to that next step. Obviously, we're lifelong learners. We're always acquiring your skills, but being resourceful means prioritizing learning what's the most important right now for you to get you to that next step.
Yeah, so much of this is hitting with me. One, I've started my own business in the last couple of years. Two, I come from a background in sport, and these two worlds are so parallel to everything that you're talking about here, in the sense that there's going to be times every single level you take, some of those levels are very accelerated. They're all encompassing. They're high pressure. They're high stress. And some of those levels are slow. They require patience. They require a level of humility, if you will, about the way in which you're going about what you're doing. But they all play their part. They all serve a role, and they serve your growth towards where it is you're trying to go. And Sergei, I'm curious, just when you think about that credibility that comes with doing what it is you guys are doing, specific to you now, when was it maybe in the birth of this company? When did you feel as though, hey, listen, we're at a point now, credibility wise, where we are the two people that not only have this idea, but we're the two that need to bring it to light and make it actually happen?
Great question, Steve. And I think, if I'm going to be honest with you, it might sound a little bit like overly confident, but almost right away.
Sure.
And the reason for that is because this wasn't our first business, right? Like, we've been starting companies, or trying to start companies, since we were 19 years old. Many failures, some successes. And so when we started School 16, feeling confident that this is the thing we should work on was paramount for us. And so we proved it right away for ourselves, right? First of all, in a university setting, that we had, external validation that we're good at teaching, that we're good at mentoring. And then when we started School 16, by building credibility with our network. So first thing we did was we invited speakers from companies like Google, Slack, Meta, fast growing startups, to give advice, kind of like you're doing on your podcast, but we did it through live events, right? And right away, that created a brand that associated with those individuals. And so we started bringing in instructors once we developed a tuition-based education program outside of just the free classes that anybody could join, where those instructors were from companies like Spotify, Netflix, Google, et cetera, right? And so credibility was really important right away for a company like this. We leveraged a network that we built over the course of almost a decade in New York, Boston, San Francisco, and we leveraged what we knew about building businesses to give ourselves the confidence to say, this is going to work, or you know what, we need to adjust this before we figure out whether it's going to be viable. And luckily, right away we saw traction. It resonated with students. It resonated in the market, and so that gave us the confidence to believe in ourselves and say, hey, we are credible. We've done this for others, and it's already going off in the right trajectory.
Yeah. I'm glad that you said what you said, quite frankly, in terms of just having that confidence that, we're the ones that should be doing this. We have the credibility that comes with it, because it speaks so much to what Vadim was talking about in his previous answer of just, you guys did all that leveling up before you started the business, whether it be learning from failures of other business, whether it be from acquiring some of that external validation that you were getting from students or whatever it may be. And then obviously learning how to build credibility within a network filled with people that already have credibility, right? And so for you guys to go through those levels before then putting yourself out there publicly and saying, this is what we're doing, this is who we are, and this is what we can do for you. Well, while it may have been the first time you were saying that to everybody, all those levels had already taken place behind the scenes, which meant that birth of the company, so to speak, it made sense. It was organic, if you will, based on just that history of what you guys built. So it makes a ton of sense to me. And if anything, it speaks so much to what you guys serve to others now. And I alluded to it in the introduction, jokingly just saying, like, anyone listening today, that maybe you're that person. Maybe you've spent 5-10 years building this network, having external credibility built time and time again, and you're just like, what the heck do I do with this thing? I'm curious, Vadim, when you hear me say something like that, what is your encouragement maybe to someone that has just been sat on that fence for, who knows, years now? Of like, do I do this thing? Do I try something different? Do I pursue what I'm good at? Like, how do you maybe convince someone to go ahead and finally get on the other side of the fence?
So, look, the caveat is that while you do have to have confidence in what you're doing, we all have self-doubts in every
Sure.
step of the way, right? And so if you're sitting there feeling that, realize that's part of the process. I was actually just reading a tweet from a gentleman that sold his company for $200 million, graduated top of his class, and said, "I'm one of the most insecure people you'll ever meet," right? So this type of stuff doesn't go away. But what I'll say to that person is, if you look at the most successful companies, or I should say companies that have the highest chances of success, or businesses that have the highest chance of survival, there's usually two factors that play into it. One is working on something where you have some kind of deep domain expertise. You really care about this topic. You've spent a lot of time researching it. You've put in those 10,000 hours. Quite frankly, actually, it doesn't even have to be 10,000 hours. 3 to 5,000 is probably enough. But you've clearly put in the time. You might spend time on this stuff on the side, right? Just reading about AI or crypto or whatever it is that interests you. And that should be one indicator of pull, right? What are you already a domain expertise at? What do you know more about than most other people out there? So that's number one. Number two, the best way to de-risk starting a business is leveraging the network you already have. So thinking about, who do I know? Now, again, if you're young in your career and maybe let's say you were like me and I and Sergei when we were 26 years old and we moved to New York City and we knew nobody, we had to build that network in New York from scratch. That took time, going to events, giving talks, whatever it was. But that can happen relatively quickly. And when you're starting an organization or a business, doesn't matter what size you anticipate it to be, you have a huge competitive advantage if there's a network you can tap into to get meetings, to get feedback, to validate your product idea, whatever it is. Versus, let's say you've been interested in, the automotive industry, but all of your network is in higher education. Well, if you're pursuing the automotive industry and you're going against someone that's starting at the same exact level, but they already have contacts in that industry, they're obviously skipping at least a year to get their proof of concept off the ground. And I'm not saying you shouldn't pursue that, but understand that it's going to be harder. Sure. And it's going to be riskier. So if you have either the network and or the domain expertise, focus on that, because it's going to increase the chances of success. And understand that if you have some trepidation, that's totally fine. It's never going to go away. But by pursuing something that's a little bit less risky and by seeing wins along the way, it's going to keep you pushing forward. And wins could be anything like scheduling a meeting. You'll feel good if you're getting that little success that week, and it'll keep you going until that next win.
Yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned the word win there, just with everything that you were saying. And I'm going to sort of keep this conversation going in terms of the competitive element, let's say, that comes with everything that we're talking about. I'm going to come to you, Sergei, on this in a second, but I just wanted to finish that thought of something you were saying there, Vadim, is this notion of the two things that you illustrated there. You made it clear that it can be either or. It doesn't have to necessarily be both. If it is both, great. Like you're in a wonderful position. But even me just listening and thinking, okay, rewind the last 18 months of my life and how I built my business. I was number two. I was all network. I had such a network off the back of this podcast, but I'd never been a leadership coach. I'd never been an executive coach. I'd never done that sort of thing. So for me, I knew that was where if you would say, if I had any insecurities, maybe they came in that space much more than my network. I knew people would talk to me day and night. But on the other side, I knew I had a lot of work to do, and that's where I would have a much bigger mountain to climb. So if anyone's listening to this, you got to have one or the other. I'd have a hard time believing that anyone who's got maybe an ambition or a belief that they're capable of going into something doesn't have at least one of those two things that you're addressing here. But going back to that competitive element now, Sergei, I love that even early on, Vadim said, advancing your career in order to stay competitive a lot of the time is a lot of the work that you guys are doing. So this show's all about that. And sometimes we talk for 20 minutes and we don't even mention the word competitive. And then I rewind and say, well, actually a ton of stuff that we just talked about helps you be competitive. But I'm just curious with you guys, how much does simply being competitive within your field firstly, how does it come up within the work that you're doing with people that sign up for the school? But secondly, and I'm almost more curious about this, how much are you guys, between the two of you, speaking about how can we continue to become more competitive as a company too?
In terms of how it plays into what we do with our students, we designed our school to be very iterative in how we develop our material, our curriculum, and how we teach. We're constantly hiring teachers from top companies. We're co-developing curriculum with them. We change curriculum sometimes on a weekly or bi-weekly basis, which, by the way, universities can't do, because if you're an accredited institution, you have to have like approval by the accreditation body,
Sure.
once a year, maybe twice a year maximum. So there's this like natural slowing down of how quickly you can update your curriculum. So that's one, is making sure it's relevant to what employers are actually doing and need right now. But two, actually thinking about the topics that are relevant to companies right now that help you stand out when you can prove, and that's a pretty key word here, prove some level of mastery or knowledge and understanding of that topic. I'll give you one example. For example, project management has been like very, very popular as a class at School 16. A lot of people want to work in project management. And so what we did is we took a look at, project management is around for decades, right? But how does it relate to current operations at companies? How do you use current tools and technologies like Asana and Notion or Monday.com or whatever it might be, Looker Studio? And I'm kind of just listing off a bunch because I just went through the curriculum development process with my project management instructor, right? But how do you use the modern tools that actually make project management what it is today? At the risk of sounding, at the risk of saying something that probably people are hearing a lot about, but maybe not sure where to put their effort in, artificial technology, that's another topic. And this is now going to speak to your second part of that question, which is how do we, as a company or even as individuals, stay competitive? Well, for me, right, we're a technology school. Me and Vadim are people in tech. We feel sort of this almost like a need to make sure that we at least understand what the current technologies are that are shaping the workforce. Because if we don't, how can we expect our students to? And if we don't, how can we expect our school to be competitive? And so for anybody, for example, that's interested in tech, right, and you're seeing all these news about artificial intelligence, and it seems overwhelming to you, well, you have to start thinking about, how do I solve that, right? How do I make it less overwhelming? How do I start being informed? One thing is start using these tools, play around with these tools, read the articles, listen to the podcast. We have been doing that self-education for the last several months so that we can talk about it intelligently. And so that once it starts impacting the workforce, which is going to happen very soon, we can help our students prepare for it. So I think a lot of it is actually being informed as an individual about what's out there, and making sure that you're doing that through conversations with people, but also through consuming information. And that doesn't mean that you have to spend years studying it, but even just a Sunday, a couple of Sundays of listening to podcasts on a topic is going to make you more of an expert than a large percentage of the population who doesn't do any kind of deep dives on these topics. So understanding the knowledge that's required now is really important in staying competitive.
Yeah, it's almost like as time has gone, the ignorance card has become less and less available. You can't really pledge ignorance anymore with the amount of data, the amount of information, the amount of articles that are out there. You can't just say, well, this is the way we've always done things. It's just like, well, the acceleration of how things now can be done is not slowing down, and companies and individuals have choices to make. It's like, either I fully embrace what is going on, and that means me having to learn about a ton of stuff I know nothing about, or I can stay in my lane and just kind of hope for the best. And what I love about what you guys are doing as an organization, that is such a distinguishing factor, is your ability every week or two, if you need to make adjustments within the curriculum, to update what it is you're doing. For one of you to have maybe an aha moment on a Sunday afternoon when you're listening to one of these podcasts and just be like, man, we need to get this stuff in our curriculum yesterday. Like, it should have been in there already. We should have been talking about this stuff for a while, and we haven't been. Let's make that adjustment right now to serve these students that are coming through the school. So I love that about you guys. And Vadim, I'm curious as well now, one of my favorite questions to ask on this show, I probably ask it at some point in some different way every episode, is simply for you guys at this point, how are you guys defining a day where it's considered a win versus not a win? Like, how are you guys maybe assessing what counts as a win for you as a company, first and foremost, in this phase of growth, in this phase of performance that you're going through right now? I'm always curious as to how you maybe measure up what you would consider to be a win on any given day.
Well, look, I think as entrepreneurs, it's easy to be hard on ourselves. So, you have to, when you do have a win, you have to, I think, take a second and appreciate it. But obviously, most of us will move on to the next thing. I think it's important to realize that it's incremental. Not everything you do is going to, have a huge inflection point. That will happen, and that's a great win, right? And sometimes a win like that will keep you going for months.
Right.
For startups and technology companies, sometimes it's raising money or getting a really lucrative partner in the door, right? These inflection points do happen, but for me, anytime there's some kind of forward momentum, again, even if it's incremental, then I consider it a win. So, for example, if I'm looking to pursue a new initiative, right? For example, new partnerships that we haven't tried before. And for us, one of the mantras Sergei and I always follow is when you're feeling a little stuck, it could be in your business or it could be in your personal life or in your career or whatever it is. One of the best things you can do is get outside of your head and get outside the door. And obviously, if you're working remotely, sometimes that means get outside, and talk to somebody on Zoom. But really, it's talk to other people and build new connections and see where they can take you. And so for me, it kind of goes back to that example that I gave you earlier. If I decide to sit down and do outreach for 2 hours to potential partners, and I get a 10% response rate on my outreach, that's a great win for the day.
Right.
Now, is there financial outcome from there yet? Not necessarily, right? Do I know if the partnership's going to work yet? No. Is there a lot more work now to be done now that I scheduled this call? Sure. But that's absolutely the win for the day because that's going to set you up for potential success in the future. And it's all about creating opportunities for yourself to have some kind of positive outcome. You're not always going to have positive outcomes, but creating opportunities for yourself to have that is critical. And so any day that happens is a win. And any day when I don't feel that kind of progress, even if it's incremental, it's less of a win. But I think it's critical again to at least do something. Like, for example, block out a couple hours to do some focus work if you're coming after a few days of just nonstop meetings, where for us, maybe it's publishing a new piece of content. Well, that can also feel like a win because, again, you have the opportunity for that content to do well or for that content to inform somebody. And so that's also a win as well.
Yeah, it's important insight for people to hear this. It doesn't matter whether you're running a business, thinking of running a business, thinking of starting a new career, 20 years into the same career, whatever it is, there has to be ways of establishing and defining what you can consider to be a win. And so much of what you're alluding to here is that ability to just press pause at the end of the day and say, what momentum did I build today? What progress did I build today? And something else I'm hearing through what you're saying there too is it only needs to be one thing sometimes. I think we're so good at finding the 4 or 5 things that didn't go well or went wrong today and focusing on those 4 or 5 things. When you're saying, like, if you can get to the end of the day and say, in this one area of my business, this one area of my career, I made a jump today. I took a step forward today. Take the win, put it in the win column and move on to the next day because those wins, they add up. Those things add up over time. And I hear that just from the momentum that you guys have currently with what it is you're doing. So sticking with that word momentum, Sergei, what does the future look like now? Let's stay in this competitive, mindset and talk a little bit about where are you guys going and what are you guys, what are those ultimate goals maybe that you guys have on the horizon that you're working towards currently?
We've when we started School 16, we didn't really know what to expect in terms of what growth would look like, and a number of students, revenue, number of teachers, how we be competitive in the market in terms of comparing ourselves to other schools. And right now, we're starting to see that there's a really big opportunity in being really the leader of alternative education when it comes to non-technical roles, when it comes to anything outside of coding. but for people that want to be at the forefront of innovation. And at School 16, 10 years from now, we can see ourselves having multiple schools as part of School 16. We really focus here on future of work careers. So that could mean a number of things, right? But one of the things that we're doing really well is we're really focusing on project-based work. That's what employers want, and that's how students really prove that they can do what they say they want to be able to do. And really early on in the development of School 16, we really realized that we're not just in the upskilling sort of game, if you will. We're in the confidence building business, really. Many people come to us because they want really good career outcomes. They want to grow as individuals, and they want to get that confidence. So where we want to see the future of School 16 and what we really believe in is the place that you come when you want to develop that confidence to be competitive in your career and work at innovative companies. For a lot of people, college could be that, or grad school could be that. For many people, it's just not really doable, not really affordable these days. And so we think that over the next decade, more and more alternative education options are going to replace what traditional higher education does. And our goal is to serve tens of thousands of students, if not more, if not hundreds of thousands of students over the next decade, to be able to get into amazing careers, to be able to start their own businesses if that's what they're interested in, right? A lot of people go to MBAs, for example, to start their own businesses. And I can tell you right now that an MBA probably isn't the best place to become an entrepreneur unless you go to like a very specific program that's designed for that, or you go to like a top 10 school where your network is going to 10x, right? And so there's so many questions out there about how you can change the model of higher education or adult continuing education to help people have career outcomes, that School 16 and the way we've started it from the get-go by having a focus not just on, hey, we're just going to teach you data science, or we're just going to teach you, this one particular discipline, but we actually give people enough context to help them figure out what discipline is right for them. I think that's really setting us up to serve people no matter what they want to do in a tech career, by lowering the barriers for them to get into those careers and reaching as many people as possible through relevant skills, project-based future of work skills that employers actually care about.
It's so obvious that, again, I've spoken to you guys for 30 minutes. I've looked at your website for a few minutes. And for me, everything that you just shared with me, Sergei, is obvious. Like it's clear to me. It's so intentional. It's so purposeful with what you guys are trying to do. And what I love is that on some level, shape, or form, I could kind of already tell that you guys were trying to insert confidence in people that would be doing something like this. But for you to phrase it the way you did there of, doing what they say they want to do, so much of the higher education process, I went through it myself. While I was a collegiate swim coach, I was still within higher education for the better part of a decade. So I saw the intricacies, and a lot of the time, sadly, there's a lot of things being done that don't serve truly what somebody wants to do. And that is a gap in education that has been there at least the 38 years that I've been on this earth, and based on the 30 years of experience my father had as well and what he said at times, it sounds like it was similar before I came along too. So just with what you guys are talking about here, there's clearly this ability to tell someone, listen, we hear what you want to do, but not only that, we want to show you how to now go and do it. And that is why that would not be at the front of all educational processes is beyond me. But the fact that it is at the front of yours is wonderful. And I hope people catch up on that and hear that. And I want to give, Vadim, I want to give you the opportunity too, just to maybe add to anything there that Sergei provided, just in terms of the future and the outlook of what you guys are planning on doing.
I think the reason why we got into education is because, kind of like what I mentioned earlier, why anybody should start a business is there's got to be at least some natural pull. Again, we all want to be successful, and we all want to make money and have freedom and to travel or whatever it is, right? That people are interested in, for the most part, on average. But there has to be some pull because you're going to be spending a lot of time on that. And we work with a lot of people when it comes to thinking about their career and career development. And it's very similar to how you think about your business and the development of your venture. Because one is the development of the self and the other is development of the venture. The other piece is I think more and more people are going to be thinking about their careers in a more flexible way. And what I mean by that is that we're not just going to think about the full-time job that we have, and we're not even going to think about the specific responsibilities within that one full-time job. We're going to be creating dynamic careers that excite us in different ways. Some people have side hustles, right? That's a popular term now. Other people don't have side hustles, but what they do internally within a company once they're there obviously depends on the culture of the company, but they will take on responsibilities outside of their job. They will help out another department. They will meet for coffee, especially if it's a bigger company, with somebody in another organization to set themselves up for what they might do 6 months to a year from now. And that's one of the things that we're excited about. Sure, obviously, we have to stay at the forefront of the trends and the technologies and the skills that are in high demand. But we want to continue to help people think about their careers more dynamically. That's why we do so much storytelling in our classrooms. That's why we do bring in experts that are in the field. That's why we like to keep it real, I guess is the best way to put it. We tell our stories and we tell people exactly the hacks that we use to get opportunities, to get a stage in front of 1,000 people, to whatever that win was for us in that particular moment in our careers, so that people can see how somebody else has done it, and so that people can see the reality of how the world works. Because there's a lot of kind of smoke and mirrors, I think, sometimes, even on social media, when you're reading about how business became successful, or when you're reading about how somebody advanced their career. You're not 100% getting the truth all the time, because the truth might not paint them in the best picture, or it might not show the shortcut that they took, or whatever it was, right?
Sure.
But that doesn't serve people very well, because then you might not get the formula that you can try to emulate. Of course, you have to make your own, but you might not get those sort of data points for what you can do, what can inform you to make the best decision to get yourself to the next stage. So there's a reason why we do that, is we try to help people uncover that smoke and mirrors, show them exactly how these things are done that's not necessarily being talked about, and that they can think about their careers in a more dynamic way than just, let me get a job and collect a salary for the rest of my life, which, by the way, is totally fine for many people, and you should do that if that's what you want.
Sure.
There's a lot of really successful careers that are built in that way, but that's not the only way to do it. And helping people see that, hey, there's more than one way to go about building your career or business is one of our biggest missions.
100%. And what's funny is now and again on this show, I have an episode, I have an interview where I think when I started this almost now 5 years ago, these were the conversations the three of us are having here today. This is what this show was built upon. And like I alluded to earlier, we got 20 minutes into this and we didn't use the word competitive until that point. But everything that you guys are bringing to this episode is a way of distinguishing yourself in a competitive way within your respective field. Period. It's that simple. But to your point there, Vadim, like, you're also saying that there's a way for everybody that can work. If you are a square peg, don't put yourself in a circular hole. Like, find that square hole that makes sense for you. And I'm again, it's why I was so adamant about having you guys come on. And not only has that been confirmed, but it's been confirmed far, far, far beyond what I was expecting for this episode to be. So I'm just appreciative of that time. But before I let you guys go, Sergei, I'll hand it to you to close us out here with just information on where we can learn more, either about yourselves or obviously about School 16 as well.
Thank you, Stephen. This was an awesome conversation. Really appreciate the insightful questions that you ask, and it's very clear that you care about your audience and the value they get from the guests and the conversation. So I appreciate that. But you can find us. We're very active on LinkedIn. So Sergei Revzin and Vadim Revzin. If you want to look us up, last name is Revzin. School16.co is our website, and we also write for Forbes. So I'm actually going to have an article that's going to go out tomorrow about what we've learned, what we're learning about how artificial intelligence is impacting education and adult education as well. And so you can find us there on Forbes, and School16 Co is pretty much all of our social media handles where people can find us. But if anybody wants to add us on LinkedIn, We're always happy to see how we can be helpful. And if anybody wants to, advice or just to be connected, to have a conversation at some point in the future, we're always happy to provide that for folks.
I appreciate that. And all that information's also going to be shared on the show notes as well for everybody. So if you missed any of that, you can certainly go there. And I'll pass it to you, Vadim, to finish us off. Any parting thoughts just on anything to sort of finish us off here?
I would say, again, thanks so much for having us, Steve. This was a great conversation. For the folks that are listening, we all have situations, so to speak. We all have circumstances that we're in. And if you took away anything from this podcast, I would say continue to pursue your interests, even when you have some downtime or some down days. Understand that there's people like Steve, there's people like us that are actually there to help you. Understand that, you're not alone in it. And if you do feel alone, take that advice from earlier. Do some outreach, connect with some people. There are givers out there that'll just give you their time for nothing in exchange, just because they want to be helpful. They want to connect with you. That's what we're doing here on the show. And hopefully that's your takeaways. Keep on pushing, because when you do, you will start to see some kind of positive outcome. And if you need help from folks like us to keep you going, that can always be a tool that you use in your toolkit.
I love it. Awesome insight. And I'm right there with you, and I'll add to that as well, that those people that are willing to give can only give if you ask. If you don't ask, they can't give. So hear that insight there, in the sense of taking the initiative and reaching out. Sergei, Vadim, it's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. I appreciate you guys joining me, and just best of luck with everything. Can't help but look forward to seeing the continued success and the future of everything you're doing with School 16. So thanks for the time.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. Likewise.
And my thanks again to both Sergei and Vadim for joining us on the show today. And usually I have to come up with something myself, but Vadim did me one better, and he gave you a takeaway for this particular episode. And I didn't want to add to it because I just loved it so much. So I'm just going to reiterate it with a British accent, I guess, in my own way, and just a willingness to reach out to people and to remain curious, to remain invested, whether that be sometimes slightly invested and other times extremely invested, but invested nonetheless in you just simply pursuing something that you want to do. And what I mentioned before that, this notion of reaching out to people, and I emphasized it there right at the very end when Vadim was done with sharing his insight. How can you expect anybody to give you any assistance or be the ear that you need to listen or be the voice that you need to hear if you don't reach out? You got to reach out. It starts with you. If you're serious about this thing that you're doing, take the initiative and reach out to people. If you're serious about this thing you're doing, surround yourself with insights, podcasts, books, shows, whatever it needs to be, that are going to encourage you to keep going on your downest of down days. You're still going to take a microscopic step in the right direction. And so everything about what Sergei and Vadim are providing through School 16 is advocating exactly that, giving you a place, a school, an educational resource, if you will, that can promote you remaining invested in you, in your success, and you doing what it is you want to do. So again, so thankful that they came on. Such a wonderful spin on the notion of simply being competitive within your career, which is what we're about on the show. And again, so thankful just for their time, and really encourage you all to just go simply check out the website as well. Information will be provided in the show notes. So go ahead and go check it out and see if there's maybe something on there right now that could be of use to you to knock out in just a couple of months. They said it, 3, maybe 4 months, you can knock out an entire curriculum and just be further along in your process in some way, shape, or form. But for the time being, guys, listen, we have been just blessed, so fortunate through 2023 as we approach almost the end of the first half. Before you know it, we'll be halfway through 2023, and the insight from our guests has been nothing short of exceptional. And so much of that insight has fueled my Coach's Corner episodes as well. Career Competitor is a resource. It's there for you to level up what you do, to build motivation towards what it is you do, the same way School 16 does. So I'm such an advocate for you going back and listening to previous episodes. Find themes, find guests that speak to you, and give it a listen. See what you think. If this is the first time that you listen to the show, I appreciate it, but subscribe from now on. Go back and listen to all of the content, because there'll be something in every single episode that I know can speak to you in your journey. So best of luck with everything and anything you've got going on within your world. I look forward to doing this again with you all very soon, and bye for now.